The day my father died, I became the richest man in the room and the loneliest. I was standing in our family's marble lobby, surrounded by people in $10,000 suits who'd never looked me in the eye before, and all I could think was, none of them are crying. Not the board members. Not the executives. Not even my mother. They were calculating. Already running numbers in their heads about what my father's death meant for their portfolios, their positions, their power. I should have been calculating too. Instead, I was remembering the last thing he said to me 3 days before the heart attack. "Julian, you're not ready." He was right. My name is Julian Cole, and until 6 hours ago, I was known for 3 things: crashing $2 million sports cars, dating supermodels, and disappointing my father. I'm 28 years old, and I've never worked a real day in my life. Why would I? When you're the only son of Marcus Cole, founder and CEO of Cole Industries, the world's most exclusive luxury empire, work is optional. We don't just sell luxury. We define it. If you're wearing a watch worth more than a house, we probably made it. If you're driving a car that only 10 people in the world can own, we definitely made it. Our couture line dress is royalty. Our private jets cost more than small countries' GDP. My father built this empire from nothing, turning a small watch repair shop into a $50 billion global powerhouse. And now, apparently, it was mine. The funeral was scheduled for tomorrow, but the real show was happening right now in the executive boardroom on the 47th floor. I could see them through the glass walls as I stepped off the elevator. 12 board members sitting around the obsidian table my father had imported from Italy. Each one of them worth at least $100 million. Each one of them looking at me like I was a child who'd wandered into the wrong room. My father's chair, the one at the head of the table, was empty. Waiting. My hands were shaking as I walked toward those glass doors. Not from grief, though that was there buried under layers of expensive cologne and practiced indifference. No, I was shaking because for the first time in my life, I couldn't charm my way out of this. I couldn't buy my way out. I couldn't crash a car and walk away with just a bruised ego. I pushed open the doors, and the conversation stopped immediately. Richard Blackwell, my father's oldest friend and the company's CFO, stood up. He was 65, silver-haired, with eyes that could calculate profit margins in his sleep. "Julian," he said, and I hated how much pity was in his voice. "We're so sorry for your loss. Your father was. Is this the part where you tell me how great he was?" I interrupted, walking to my father's chair. I didn't sit. Not yet. Because I already know. He was brilliant. Visionary. Irreplaceable. And now he's gone, and you're all wondering if the screw-up son can possibly fill his shoes. The room went quiet. Too quiet. I'd said the thing everyone was thinking, but no one wanted to acknowledge. Richard cleared his throat. "Julian, no one doubts your potential. But Cole Industries is a complex operation. Perhaps it would be wise to consider a temporary advisory board, someone with experience to help guide." "You want to sideline me?" I said flatly. "Before my father's even in the ground." "We want to protect the company," another board member spoke up. Catherine Zhou, head of our Asian markets. She'd never liked me, mostly because I'd once gotten drunk at a shareholder meeting and called her presentation boring. To be fair, it was, "Your father spent 40 years building this empire. We have a responsibility to ensure it continues." I looked around the table, seeing the truth in their faces. They didn't believe in me. Why would they? I'd given them no reason to. My biggest accomplishment was being born into the right family. But something my father said once echoed in my head, something from when I was 16, and crashed my first Ferrari. "Julian, you're going to fail. A lot. The question is whether you'll learn from it, or just keep crashing." I'd kept crashing. But standing there with 12 pairs of eyes judging me, I realized I didn't want to crash anymore. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, and my voice came out stronger than I felt. "I'm taking my father's position as CEO, effective immediately. You'll all keep your positions. I'll expect weekly reports on every division. We have a board meeting in 2 weeks, and I want proposals for our next fiscal year. If anyone has a problem with that, there's the door." Richard opened his mouth, probably to object, probably to remind me that I'd barely graduated college, that my business experience consisted of spending money, not making it. But before he could speak, the door opened. Sarah Chun, my father's personal attorney, walked in. She was carrying a leather portfolio that I recognized immediately. My father's seal was pressed into the wax on the closure. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Sarah said, but her face suggested she wasn't sorry at all. She looked nervous, which was strange, because Sarah never looked nervous. "But there's something the board needs to know. Something Mr. Cole specified should be revealed immediately upon his death." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sarah walked to the head of the table, right next to where I was standing. She broke the wax seal and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Her hands were shaking slightly. "Marcus Cole's will was updated 3 months ago," she began. "Most of it is standard distributions of personal assets, charitable foundations, pension arrangements. But there's a clause regarding succession of the company." My heart started pounding. 3 months ago. That was right after I'd wrecked the Bugatti. Right after the tabloid photos of me leaving a club at 4 a.m. with 2 actresses. Right after my father had called me into his office and said, "You're not ready." Sarah continued, her voice careful and measured. The clause states that Julian Cole will inherit majority control of Cole Industries with full authority as CEO. However, I knew there'd be a however. There's always a however with my family. However, this inheritance is contingent upon certain conditions being met. First, Julian must maintain profitability across all divisions for a minimum of 1 fiscal year. Second, he must not engage in any behavior that damages the company's reputation or shareholder confidence. And third, Sarah paused, looking at me with something that might have been sympathy. Third, he must compete for control. What does that mean? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Richard Blackwell leaned forward, his face pale. Marcus didn't. He did, Sarah confirmed. She pulled out another document. Marcus Cole had another son, Daniel Cole, born 31 years ago in London to Elena Morrison. Marcus provided financial support but never publicly acknowledged him. Daniel was raised abroad, educated at Oxford, and has been working in luxury goods management for the past decade. The room exploded. Board members talking over each other, some standing, some pulling out phones. I just stood there, frozen. A brother. I had a brother. My father had another son. Why didn't he tell us? Catherine Jo demanded. Why keep this secret for 30 years? Because he was protecting the company, Sarah said quietly. And possibly protecting Daniel. But 3 months ago, Daniel contacted Marcus. He wanted recognition. He wanted his place in the family. And Marcus decided to give him a chance. This is insane, I finally managed to say. My voice sounded distant, like someone else was speaking. My father is dead and you're telling me he set up some kind of corporate thunderdome between me and a brother I never knew existed? It's not that simple, Sarah said, but her eyes said it absolutely was that simple. The will states that both Julian and Daniel will assume roles within Cole Industries. Julian as CEO, Daniel as President of International Operations. For the next 12 months, you will both work to grow the company. Whichever division performs better, whichever brother demonstrates superior business acumen and leadership, that person will inherit majority control. 51% of voting shares. And the other one? I asked. The other one receives a $500 million severance and is removed from the company entirely. I actually laughed. Couldn't help it. The sound came out harsh and bitter. So my father's final message to me was, here's everything you've ever wanted. Now fight your secret brother for it. That's his legacy. Your father believed in meritocracy, Richard said, and I could hear the approval in his voice. Of course he approved. This meant I could still fail. This meant the screw-up son might lose everything. He wanted to ensure that whoever led Cole Industries earned it. When do I meet him? I asked. Daniel, when does my long-lost brother show up to take half my inheritance? Sarah glanced at her watch. According to the schedule Marcus left, Daniel should be arriving at the building in approximately. The elevator chimed. We all turned to look through the glass walls. A man stepped out. He was tall, maybe 6 feet 2 inches, with dark hair styled perfectly, wearing a suit that probably cost $15,000. But it wasn't the suit that caught my attention. It was his face. He looked like my father. Younger, obviously, but the same sharp jawline, the same intense eyes, the same way of holding himself like he owned whatever room he was in. He looked like the son my father had always wanted. He looked nothing like me. Daniel walked toward the boardroom with confident, measured steps. Every board member was staring. I realized I was holding my breath. He pushed open the door, and his eyes found mine immediately. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. 2 sons of Marcus Cole meeting for the first time. I waited for him to introduce himself. Instead, he smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a shark that just spotted blood in the water. Julian, he said, his accent British, but with something else underneath. Brother, I've been looking forward to this for a very long time. He extended his hand. I looked at it, this hand connected to a person who could take everything from me. A person my father had kept secret for 31 years. A person who looked like the son Marcus Cole had always deserved. I shook his hand. His grip was firm, confident. Welcome to the family, I said, because what else could I say? Well, Richard said, breaking the tension. I suppose we should start the transition meeting. There's a great deal to discuss, division assignments, reporting structures, media strategy, I interrupted. Right. Because we'll need to explain to the world that Marcus Cole had a secret son. That should go over well with shareholders. Actually, Daniel spoke for the first time since the handshake, his voice smooth and educated. I think the narrative could work in our favor. A brilliant man who provided for 2 families, who gave opportunities to all his children. It's very modern, very progressive. I stared at him. You've thought about this? I've thought about everything, he replied. I've had 31 years to think about what it means to be Marcus Cole's son. The forgotten son. The secret. While you were driving sports cars and dating models, I was building a career in luxury goods. Learning the industry from the ground up. Making connections. Proving myself. Daniel has an impressive resume, Sarah added, pulling out another document. He was Director of European Operations for Montblanc, Senior Consultant for Patek Philippe, and most recently, he launched a successful boutique luxury brand in London that was acquired last year for $200 million. The number hit me like a physical blow. $200 million. He'd built and sold a company for $200 million, and I'd spent the last year burning through my trust fund. That's great, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But this is Cole Industries. It's different, bigger, more complex. Which is why Marcus gave us both a year to prove ourselves, Daniel said. May the best brother win. He said it lightly, almost jokingly, but there was steel underneath. This wasn't a game to him. This was everything. The transition begins tomorrow, Sarah said. Daniel will be given full access to all international divisions. Julian will maintain CEO authority over North American operations and corporate strategy. You'll both report to the board quarterly. At the end of 12 months, an independent audit will determine which division showed superior growth, innovation, and profitability. The next 2 hours were a blur. Lawyers talking, board members asking questions, Sarah walking through hundreds of pages of documentation. Daniel sat across from me the entire time, occasionally taking notes, asking intelligent questions, being everything a CEO's son should be. I kept thinking about my father. Why didn't he tell me? Why didn't he prepare me for this? 3 months ago, when he'd updated the will, he could have said something. Could have warned me, could have introduced me to my brother before making us competitors. But he hadn't, because I realized with cold clarity, he'd wanted me to figure out myself. He'd wanted to see if I could rise to the challenge, or if I'd crash like I always did. When the meeting finally ended, it was past midnight. Board members filed out, shaking Daniel's hand, welcoming him to the company. A few stopped to pat my shoulder, offering condolences that felt hollow. Sarah gathered her documents. Julian, I know this is a shock. Did you know? I asked. About Daniel. She hesitated, then nodded. Your father told me when he updated the will. He made me promise not to say anything until after. After he was dead, I finished. Great. Perfect. Anything else I should know? Any other secret siblings waiting to show up? Maybe I have a sister in Tokyo? A brother in Dubai? Julian, I'm going home, I said, standing up. My legs felt shaky. Tomorrow we can play happy family and pretend this is all normal. I walked out without looking back. The elevator ride down felt like falling. When I reached the lobby, the same people in expensive suits were still there, but now they were whispering, pulling out phones, spreading the news. Marcus Cole's secret son. The competition for the empire. By morning, it would be all over the financial news. I pushed through the revolving doors into the New York night. My driver was waiting with the Bentley, but I waved him off. I needed to walk, needed to think. The city was alive around me, tourists and business people, and everyone living their normal lives while mine was imploding. My phone started ringing. Mom. I declined it. Not ready for that conversation yet. A text came through from my ex-girlfriend, the model I'd been seeing before Dad died. Heard the news about your brother. That's crazy. Call me. I deleted it. Another text, this one from my college roommate. Dude, secret brother? Your family is insane. Delete. Then one more text, from a number I didn't recognize. Welcome to the competition, brother. Don't take this personally, but I'm going to win. You've had 28 years of being Marcus Cole's only son. Now it's my turn. D. I stared at that message for a long time. Standing on the corner of Fifth Avenue, surrounded by luxury stores that my family's company supplied, I realized something. Daniel was right. I'd had everything handed to me, and I'd wasted it. He'd had nothing but a secret support check, and he'd built something anyway. The question was, could I learn fast enough to beat him? Could I become the son my father had wanted me to be? Or was this whole competition just my father's way of proving I was never good enough? I walked into my penthouse apartment at 2 a.m., exhausted but too wired to sleep. The place was absurdly large for one person, 6,000 square feet, overlooking Central Park. Everything in it cost more than most people made in a year. Everything in it was empty. I poured myself a drink, my father's favorite scotch, and stood at the window looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow, the real competition would begin. Tomorrow, I'd have to face the board, the media, my mother, and a brother who'd spent his whole life preparing for this moment. I raised the glass in a silent toast to my father, wherever he was. You wanted me to prove myself. I said to the empty room. Fine. Game on. I downed the scotch, feeling it burn. Then I noticed something. On my coffee table, there was an envelope. Heavy cream paper with my father's seal. It hadn't been there when I left for the office that morning. I picked it up with shaking hands and broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper in my father's handwriting. Julian, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you about Daniel myself. I'm sorry for a lot of things. But I'm not sorry for this competition. You need it. You've spent your whole life believing you're not good enough. Believing you're just a spoiled heir who can't measure up. Prove yourself wrong. Or prove me right. The choice is yours. Also, there's something you should know about Daniel. Something I discovered 3 weeks before I died. Check the hidden safe in my office. Code is your birthday. Trust no one. Dad. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the letter. A hidden safe. A code. Trust no one. What had my father discovered? What didn't I know about my newfound brother? I grabbed my keys and headed back out the door. The Cole Industries building at 3 a.m. was empty except for night security. They recognized me, let me pass without question. I took the private elevator to the executive floor, to my father's office, now technically my office. I'd only been in here a handful of times growing up. My father had always kept it locked, kept it private. His sanctuary. I found the safe behind a painting of a vintage Cole watch, the first one he'd ever made. My birthday as the code. Inside were documents, files, photographs. And as I started reading, my blood ran cold. Daniel wasn't just my father's secret son. He'd been part of something else. Something my father had been investigating. Something that suggested his death maybe wasn't a heart attack after all. The morning sun was starting to rise over Manhattan when I finally left my father's office, carrying files that changed everything. In 6 hours, I'd meet with the board. In 6 hours, I'd start competing with Daniel for control of the empire. But now I knew the truth. This wasn't just about business. This wasn't just about proving myself. This was about survival. And somewhere in this building, my brother, the one with the perfect resume and the charming smile, might be the person who killed our father. I had 1 year to win the company. But first, I had to stay alive. Because if I was right about what I'd found, someone didn't want a Cole at the head of this empire. Someone wanted us both gone. The game had changed, and I was finally ready to play.